we'll do the call to order by the chair.
Okay, roll call. Timothy Caton.
Here.
Elizabeth Collins. Elizabeth Collins.
Here.
It's not a roll call.
No worries. Pauline Brodeur.
Here.
Paul Stein.
Here.
That completes the roll call.
Okay, stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are we gonna go through the normal business with the,
Yeah, we'll just do the minutes and then the two warrants, and then
Okay.
I'll just go into the hearing.
okay. Is there an approval of the minutes for the June 18, 2025?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
I was not at that.
Okay, I'll second. Second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Approval of,
So just for the record, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna have two votes in the affirmative and two abstentions.
yeah. Okay. Approval of the warrant number 12. Need that in form of a motion, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the warrant number 12?
Motion to approve the warrant 12.
Second? Second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Approval of warrant 13. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, discussion. All in favor? Aye.
I do have a question.
Okay.
It's on the other page. The amounts are here. Why not, and you see the amounts on everything else, why aren't amounts on these items? So we know what we're,
The amounts of each individual check, you mean? Is that what? On page 14, it lists the checks that were cut for the month of July.
we're somewhere in here.
Yes, on page 14 lists.
Yes, I've got 14.
Okay, so it lists the check number, starting, 6290 on the left, and then it's got the date that the check was issued, who the check was written to, what it was for, and the amount.
That's fine, thank you.
You are, okay.
All right, so,
And on the warrant number 14?
Yeah,
13.
Oh, that was on 13.
yeah.
13, yes. So that would be approving the,
You're getting ahead of them, Paul, just go back a little bit.
yeah,
Okay, you're right, it says warrants.
we're 13. Oh, here's 13, okay. And then how far is that?
Page 14 lists all the checks that were issued.
Uh-huh.
They're all numbered on the bottom of the page, right? So you'll have, right there.
Yeah, okay,
And so I give that to the board every month,
okay.
which is a summary of everything that has been paid for the month.
Okay, so that runs through page 16.
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
I got that.
I usually try to number all the pages so I can reference what we're talking about.
I got it. No,
So-
I'm all in.
Okay. And if you could just hand those down so the other three can sign, that would be great.
Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, second? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, so vote. Okay, management agency board.
All right. To give you a summary, we have our year ends forms in here, beginning on page 17. That's our financial reporting as of month ending June 30th, which, as everybody knows, is the end of the fiscal year. So I'm happy to say that the Westport Housing Authority ended the year in, very solid shape. Our operating statement is found on page 19. That's really what I go to give an overview of how we did. And rent collections came in 4% over budget for the year, which is right where you want it to be. So we were in good shape with that. Under expenses, administrative expenses, there was only one line item that was significantly out of whack, and that was legal. Okay, there was reasons for that that the board is aware of. We had a couple of evictions that we had to process, and normally the Westport Housing Authority has not had to expend a lot of money legally, but this past year we did. There were a couple of problematic folks that, when Attleboro took over, were in the works of, the evictions were in the works. We just had to see it through, which we did. Our maintenance expenses came in pretty much right on the money. We were 7% over budget. That can easily be explained because of the number of vacancies that we did have during the course of the year. A couple of these units were left in really abysmal condition that required a lot of extra expenses. So overall, and we instituted a cleaning program in the hallways that had not been done before, so that was extra money that was spent. The hallways are looking pretty good in my opinion. I'm thinking of maybe backing off on that to maybe once every other month instead of once per month, but I can have a conversation on that as we go forward. But overall, we're in very good shape. Our operating reserve stands at about $85,000, which for a housing authority this size is decent. Our goal this year is to hopefully get that over 100,000, just to have a little bit more of a buffer. But overall, I'm very happy with how the year turned out. And just for the residents that are here, I can say that I'm glad that Attleboro is here. I think Westport Housing is certainly a very well maintained housing authority. If you're driving in here from the street, compared to other housing authorities that you see out there, I mean Westport, at least aesthetically, to the eye, has very good curb appeal, and I think the buildings are well maintained. And I think David, the maintenance guy, does an excellent job. So Dave's been here for a number of years, and he knows where the bodies are buried, so to speak. So he does a great job. So as far as year-end statements are concerned, there's really three that we have to be concerned with, and that's number one, the operating statement that I just reviewed, pages 17 through 21. The next statement that I'm required to present to the board and we're required to submit to the Executive Office of Housing is the tenant accounts receivable, which begins on page 22. The total tenant accounts receivable that is on the books right now is found on page 22. About 3/4 of the way down the page. $11,862. That's the total amount that is owed either by existing residents or by former residents. Okay, so we're not, compared to the total rent roll of $266,519, this is not a very bad place to be. We do have to, write off some money that we have deemed to be uncollectible, but we can do that at a subsequent meeting. Just for the board's information, whenever somebody gets behind on rent, for whatever reason, we always try to work with them to enable them to catch up, okay? It's easier said than done. Typically, my experience in public housing is, if somebody gets behind in their rent by a month or two, it's very difficult to catch up. What we try to do is we try to set them up into some sort of a repayment agreement that is, that is palatable to them, which includes existing rent and a portion of the unpaid balance. So for example, if someone owes us $500 in back rent, and their rent is $300 regularly, what we try to do is get them to pay the $300 and then an extra $50 a month on the unpaid balance to whittle that down. Sometimes that works out pretty good. However, repayment agreements that the housing authority staff works out with residents don't have any legal force to them. So if we work out a repayment agreement and then the resident doesn't follow through on it, we don't have the authority right then and there to start eviction proceedings. We have to, at that point, we have to go to the attorney and say that they're not following through on their agreement. So we have to take the next step and go to legal on that. Some of this, I mentioned that the total tenant accounts receivable is $11,862. About half of that amount is one former resident. So it's not as bad as it looks on paper for our existing tenants. So I'll be addressing that with the board in subsequent meetings. Go ahead.
How far out do you go before you start the eviction process? How far many months out?
Well,
based on money or based on?
It's really up to what we decide. Obviously, if your rent is $400 a month and you've been paying regularly with no problem, and then 1 month you only pay $300 of the $400, and then the following month you're back on track and you're paying $400, we're not going to evict you for $100. That we're going to work with you to say, hey, can you throw in an extra $10 a month to satisfy that unpaid balance? If they don't pay at all for months at a time, usually we don't let it get past 2 months before we start reaching out, and then we gauge the receptiveness of the resident. Sometimes we deal with very belligerent residents that don't want to work with us, and then so that all plays into the calculation about how hard we pursue it. Technically, if you owe rent, if you owe money and you don't pay it, we can go after you. In reality, we try to take the totality of the circumstances and we evaluate it based upon that. Now, if there's other issues going on simultaneous to non-payment of rent, like lease violations and noise and things like that, that all plays into our calculation as well. So, but this is all, this is all a conversation that we have with the attorney. We're not out there, I for one am not out there freelancing, deciding who we're gonna keep and who we're gonna evict. It's all based upon legal and what we think the courts would say and so forth. We all know there's a housing crisis right now. We all know that people who live in public housing, I would imagine, don't have the ability to go out on the open market and rent an apartment for $3,000 a month or whatever the going rate is now. It's not really affordable. So what we've found is that judges are very, very hesitant to evict folks from public housing. We've had decent luck. I call it luck. We've had decent experiences. Two come to mind here in Westport, just over the past year, where the circumstances were so egregious, and we were able to present all of this to the judge, and the judge agreed that these two individuals should not be here. So sometimes the judge does rule in our favor, but we have to weigh all that, plus the fact, you can probably appreciate this. Every time I pick the phone up to talk to an attorney, it's $200. Okay. So I have to weigh that. Like, do I really need to escalate this to legal, or can this be handled in-house? So
I would have some suggestions on how to handle that problem. Because my practice, that is not how I work.
yeah, okay, all right. I'm all ears.
Yeah, no, there is, I forgot the term now that it's called, but, there was, at least when I was practicing, there was a movement that would, try to listen to the clients, even the corporate clients, and work with them to make sure they were getting the service without feeling the need to pick, that every time they would pick the phone, they were flat. I don't believe that's the way my license was written.
I applaud you.
So, but we can talk about that.
Of course.
I own rental property, and the excuses that people gave,
Fine?
I said, I own rental property, and the excuses that people would give me,
Yeah.
and the messes that they would leave, it was awful.
It's, like I said, a couple of the units that we turned this year, cost a lot of money to turn just because of the condition that they were left in. And then finally, the last form, which is really some basic form, is located on page 29. It's it's what's called the top 5 compensation form. We are required now by state statute to submit to the state every year, certify our top 5 highest compensated employees. The Westport Housing Authority only has one employee, that's our maintenance department. I work for the Attleboro Housing Authority, so I'm not on the Westport payroll. I get a portion of the management fee as a supplement to my Attleboro salary, but I'm not a Westport Housing employee. Our only employee is our maintenance mechanic, David, and his salary is listed there. So you might want to, you might be asking, and I think to our existing 3 board members, I reviewed this a year ago, but I'll review it again now. Back in 2014, there were housing authority reforms that were proposed by Governor Patrick at the time. And part of the reforms included regionalization of housing authorities and a whole host of other things. there was a lot of pushback on the regionalization concept by local boards. Local board says, we want to maintain our independence. The folks in Westport said, we don't want to be part of a huge housing authority in Bristol County. We want to keep our independence. A lot of other boards felt the same way. There's no secret that there was a lot of shenanigans going on in some housing authorities throughout the state and throughout the country. Maybe you're aware of the situation up in Chelsea. That's what precipitated all of this. The executive director of the Chelsea Housing Authority was paying himself an annual salary of about $500,000 a year. And he was able to do that. The board let him do it. But what he was doing was he was putting himself down as the executive director, and then he had staff positions that were salary, and he would put himself down for each of these positions and grab the salary out of each of them. And it was he went to prison. He was in jail. He went to prison. The board was asked to resign or face criminal charges. The board, they all resigned. So now, what all housing authorities are required to do is, the state wants to know, what are you paying your staff? So that's why this report is listed. In Westport, it's easy peasy. There's only one employee. There's not 5. That's why there's 2 through 5 here. It says no employee. So you can see David's salary for last year, and that has to be reported to the state. So that's really it. That's really the extent of the reports. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pass these 2 forms around, very similar to the warrant. If you could all just sign off on that. Paul, you can sign those. Okay, because you're on the board now officially.
You just need signatures.
I just need you to sign once. So
On both of these?
yeah. So I'll need you to, for example, sign over here.
Okay.
And here you can sign right there.
I'm going to sign, but I have a question.
Pass it down. Tim, you're going to sign where it says chair. Yeah. What's your question, Paul?
On page 21, and maybe this could be, we can have a discussion under new business at another meeting.
Sure.
But I just noticed that on the operating reserve, the pension reserve, the LTD reserve, and the are all going in the wrong direction.
That is correct.
And I just wondered, I just note that, it doesn't seem to me that it's right, that it's something that needs critical attention. The OCBE reserve is a little concerned, and I don't know why that is so high relative to our operating expenses, but I just note that, and I think obviously the numbers are the numbers, and I'm certifying the numbers. But I do have questions that I would like to have that addressed, maybe.
Yeah, the easiest way to explain OPEB is that's the pension liability of the housing authority, going forward. Obviously, Westport Housing has retirees throughout the years that have retired from here. And our fee accountant, Paul, his name is Dan Robillard. He's going to be here, I believe, in October to present the budget. And part of that explanation is involving OPEB and how that's factored in. There's nothing we can do about that number. That number is what it is. And if people retire and they pull benefits out of the system, that number is going to keep on going up. It does not reflect the operating sustainability of the housing authority. So that I can answer, but for a more in-depth explanation, that'll be coming up.
So I get unfunded reserve, that's for our current maintenance, basically, that's the maintenance.
Yes,
Current employee.
correct, yeah,
And, the OPEB is for those who retired, they're getting money out of the pension
correct,
fund,
correct.
for the state pension fund. And it's going to be, I think that's the tester because that those deficits in no way have any bearing or effect on the services that the housing authority is providing to tenants.
That is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Excellent question. So those forms are going around, I appreciate that. And the only other thing I have, Mr. Chairman, is the work order report is in here as well for your review. Again, Paul, for your benefit, these are the completed work orders.
I'm familiar with these.
Yeah, and again, if there's any questions about any individual work order, you can reach out to me. But for, like last month in July, David completed 24 work orders, which I think is a pretty standard month, as far as I can tell. The only other thing I have is separate from your board packet, as I mentioned before. We are getting ready to do some exterior paint work on the buildings. And Blue Oak Painting, when we went out to bid, was the low bidder. What we do when there's a low bidder, we don't just take somebody's word for it that they're the low bidder. We have our architect do a reference check, and then we look at whether they have the capability to do the job or not. And our architect, Robert Smith, who we've used many times, both here in Westport and elsewhere, sent the letter that he finds no objection to awarding Blue Oak Painting the job for $39,900. So I just need a motion, a second, and an approval to authorize me to enter into a contract with Blue Oak Painting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Any discussion? On the bid documents, it does say lowest qualified. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's why you have that form.
Right.
So we have that.
That's right. You know, as an example, okay, if there's a big job coming up and, Joe's Painting comes in and says, oh, I'll do it for 10 grand. You're gonna say, well, gee, we think it's a $50,000 job. That's what we are estimating. And you're coming in saying, you're gonna do it for 10,000. Let me see your crew. Let me see what kind of operation you're running. And he turns around and says, well, I'm a one-man show. I do all my own work. I do this. It's not a qualified bidder because one individual can't handle the whole job. So we say lowest qualified bidder because every so often, it does happen, we get some fly-by-night that'll come in and, dump the works up and bid low that we've never heard of. And then a lot of these folks, by the way, have to be registered with the state in order to bid. And Paul, I was having this conversation with Tim briefly before the meeting. If you look at the highest bidder on the second page there, you'll see that FRG Contracting bid $148,000 for this job, whereas our low bidder bid over $100,000 less. So you might be asking yourself, why, you know? And a lot of these folks, have to bid on certain jobs in order to keep active in the state system. So in all likelihood, FRG, who's based in Woburn, if you see the address here, they probably had no intention of wanting to win the bid, but they just wanted to go through the motions to stay active in the state, so.
All right, so move, right?
Let me, I just thought, these are two different, recs.
No, the letter from Mr. Smith is recommending Blue Oak painting. I think what he did, I think he cut and pasted.
Okay.
He put bathroom renovation.
Well, he's got, and all the numbers don't match, do they? I'm just trying to figure out how they got it.
$39,000.
3990,
What
$39,900 plus all.
EOHLC number 264093, JMBA number 2513, and then this one says BDO project B25V2CS, exterior painting 667-1, project 334055. They don't match up.
yeah, what he did, I can tell you what he did. 264093 at the top, that's the project number of this bathroom renovation project, wherever that is. What I think he did was he may have, he may have forgot to take that line off. Maybe it's the Woburn Housing Authority, I don't know who,
Can we get a corrected
yes,
recommendation?
we can.
But, you know, subject to substituting a correct
Of course.
recommendation, I would accept it. So I accept the recommendation, but I didn't think the record should be clear that what we're accepting is the recommendation for a exterior cleaning job and not a bathroom renovation.
Well said. So do you want to, we'll modify the motion?
Yeah, change the motion.
Change the motion to authorizing the management agent to enter into a contract with Blue Oak Painting for the painting job at the Westport Housing Authority, pending the modification of the approval letter
So,
to request proper numbers.
Pending receipt of an amended recommendation that has the correct project information.
Will do.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Okay, anything on the old business? Hearing none, new business.
Our next meeting is going to be September 17th.
Yeah. Commissioners' comments. I have one comment. We spoke a few minutes ago about having a couple, spending some money with maintenance because we had some vacancies and stuff like that. We don't ever take care of the vacancies that we have.
We have two vacants right now. One of them has been vacant for a long time due to the fact that there was extensive renovations required. Secondary to that was the fact that we are now utilizing the CHAMP application system. And the CHAMP application system should have been used here regularly going back to 2021. It was not. So unfortunately, what's happening now is when we pull a list, a lot of the names that we are getting on the list have either already been housed elsewhere or we can't get a hold of them. So what's happening is we're going through the list. We're going through list after list after list in order to qualify somebody. EOHLC is aware of the issue we're having. and they understand what's going on. So I'm not anticipating that it's gonna be too much longer on those two.
When going through the CHAMP program, are you following Westport's guidelines
Yes,
or Attleboro's?
we are,
I think you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Okay.
I do, there, you know, we always try, our goal, or, you know, it should be our goal, is to house local people. You know, that should be our goal, and what happens, and Paul, for your, edification on this, CHAMP is a centralized application system now. In the olden days, each individual housing authority had their own list. So when you had a vacancy, you would just go to the next application in the pile that was the oldest one, and you would work to try to house that person. Now everything goes into a centralized waiting list. Unfortunately, what happens is there are thousands of people on this list, and what happens is out of desperation, when folks are applying, they will check off every single housing authority in the state of Massachusetts, which is fine. But, if you live in West Stockbridge, okay, which is way out by the New York border, and your name gets pulled on the Westport list, okay, and we contact you, and we say, hey, you're number one on the Westport list. They turn around and say, yeah, but I live in West Stockbridge, I'm not moving all the way to Westport. So it just begs the question, well, why did you check off Westport housing if you have no intention of living there? So we deal with a lot of that. We deal with folks that mark it off and then turn us down.
We have guidelines, and among those guidelines are the priorities for Westport residents, right?
Go on.
Not any,
Well, there is a preference for Westport residents. But if a Westport resident applies on a given date, and then somebody else who's not a Westport resident applies, let's say they're a veteran, okay, or homeless. If you're homeless, that will trump being a Westport resident. If you're a veteran, that will be ahead of a Westport resident.
So if you're a veteran who lives in Boston, you get preference over somebody in Westport who's not a veteran.
That's the way
I
this
get
is.
the homeless, I have understand why homeless people should be housed before it's people who already live somewhere, but that's a little strange to me.
Yeah.
And that's mandated now by the state.
Correct. We can look again at the preferences again for Westport. In fact, I can meet with the deputy director who does an outstanding job with the CHAMP.
And there's
Navigation.
no workaround that we have available to.
Well, the whole idea behind the CHAMP system is to avoid favoritism. What was happening, not necessarily, well, maybe it was happening here in Westport, I don't know. But in the larger cities, what would happen is you get in the olden days, the mayor's office would call up and say, hey, the city councilor's cousin,
Somebody's gonna jump the line, I get it.
I want you to house this person, and you would be like, well, if you stood your ground and said, I'm gonna do it the right way, and no, I'm not housing so-and-so, you would eventually find yourself either out of a job, or demoted, or whatever.
But having the chance, we can have that discussion later.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I fully
Okay,
understand what, if the news, sometimes the cure is worse than the disease.
Right.
I totally agree with Paul. Westport doesn't, should have preference,
Right,
in my opinion.
right.
But, do we have Westport people who are looking to get in here?
Yes.
We do.
Well, a couple of recent ones were Westport people, I think. Right, so that did work out.
Okay, well, that's a work in process, but
No, we'll spend more time on that in
I'd love to
subsequent
see a
meetings.
workaround for
Yeah.
that, because it does seem that we should keep things local. And I get it, that, I mean, I have seen experience in some of the larger communities, larger cities, where there's political shenanigans, but it's not just because of the list. It's because somebody jiggers the numbers and gets somebody qualified who's probably not qualified. And that, I don't know how the chance list fixes that. But we can have a discussion about where that is at and what it there we can do to protect our interests here and see if we are doing the best we can for people here in Westport.
Yep, I agree.
Okay? Tenant comment.
I
Oh, I'm sorry.
been holding my.
I'm sorry. I guess it.
I'll put it down for rest.
Right.
Okay. Paul.
Yep.
Who's our attorney?
We are using Kyle Vieira. Yeah, we use him for all of our managed agencies.
Where are they from?
Attleboro,
Adam.
correct.
The last 2 weeks, I've had some people talk to me about, we're about doing this, we're about doing that. And, do we still have rules and regulations?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay. When was the last time we looked at
Probably, I want to say right after Attleboro took over, I believe.
that? This is person last week.
The what?
Well, here we go. It's a busy place. A lot of the tenants know that a lot of the other tenants are getting, doing, so on and so forth. I remember doing the last book for Sam was here. And we were over there. There were a lot of questions and a lot of disagreements. Some of which were mine and didn't stick. When a tenant has a problem and they need to fix that problem, they go to you. And, excuse me, they need clarification of what they want to do in their apartment, outside the apartment, whatever. And in the book it said, you need a doctor's note in order for us to look at it. Okay? I think that's fair. However, when that person brings the doctor's note, nobody else knows about it. The tenants don't know about it. And if you don't know about it, you're never going to get it. And you're eligible to get that. But people are looked over all the time. And they say, please, how come? How come? So, I hope we will go over that rules and regs, because it's really, really important. And it does a lot to the tenants.
I can address that. We can take another look at it, sure. I mean, when you say a doctor's note, are you referring to a reasonable accommodation?
Well, whatever the person said, I need this accommodation.
First floor, a first floor apartment, moving up.
But Greenwood says that, you need a doctor's letter. So they go off and they get get their doctor's note, they bring it back to whoever is the executive director. And, executive director takes the letter and gets exactly what they want. Without anybody knowing. I know you're not supposed to be, telling other tenants what people are getting, although they tell each other, but that.
I mean, if someone comes to us with a medical accommodation, yes, we take that,
Oh, I know,
but we don't, I hear, I mean, not just here, but in different places.
sure.
I'll get phone calls from, neighbors of this individual saying, hey, Mrs. So-and-so could really use the first floor. And I know she dropped off a doctor's note saying she needs the first floor. Now, I can't discuss anybody else's private
No.
medical stuff. Now, if an ambulance comes in here and takes somebody out, well, obviously people see that they took somebody out, and they may get the impression that there might be a medical issue. I mean, that's something that is out in the public, but we don't share any private medical information with anybody.
Of course not. The last thing is, what about animals? How do you deal with animals?
Again, if there's a reasonable accommodation, okay, a big thing now is, people say they need emotional support animals, okay? If there's a medical reason why you need a cat or a dog, a little dog, we would take that under advisement. Obviously, these apartments are small. If you can't have a Great Dane in here. I mean, that's not gonna work. But I know there was something going on recently about residents that were feeding the feral cats on the property. All right, so we encourage people not to do that because feral cats could bring disease, and once you feed an animal, they always remember where they ate. So you're never gonna they're never gonna go anyplace else.
We had the animal officer here a couple of years ago, and she told everybody, don't feed them.
There's no law against feeding the, because I talked to the animal control officer.
I know,
There's no law
some
against
places
feeding
here, it
animals.
smells like a litter box.
It's our law. It's our policy not to feed the animals, not our law.
Well, it's a health
It's a
health
health
thing too.
issue, but it's
You know.
not a law, because that's what you told
Okay,
me.
to go along with that, I can remember quite vividly being over there, going through this booklet, and somebody at the time, I can't remember who, wanted a dog, and they talked. I'm against having dogs at the hotels. I said, I love dogs. I would have 100 dogs if I could. But you've got to look at other things that might happen. If I'm on the second floor here, and the lady downstairs has a dog that goes up and down. And all of a sudden, the dog is so excited that somebody's coming out. It's underneath her legs that she falls. Well, I'm going to tell you, this one heck of a big issue. It's not safe. And I didn't win on that regulation. They went through with it. But then, for a long time, they never had a dog. And then eventually the dog started coming in. So I think it's something to think about.
In the context of going through the handbook, I believe that's part of the handbook. So, yeah, we'll incorporate that when we review it.
I think that's,
Well, what other thing is an issue about dogs is whether or not the resident picks up after the dog. Not that the dog, go anywhere, and everywhere, not pick it up. That was the issue with dogs. Otherwise, fine.
We had an emotional support dog here, and this woman would go to work every day, leave the dog at home, and 2 tenants would go over there and take the dog out and walk it.
Well, that's not an emotional support.
Exactly.
Right. Correct.
thank you.
Right. You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the commission? Okay, tenant comments.
I want to congratulate Mr. Stein,
Stein.
okay, for being on board.
Remember,
Can I get a little introduction of who you are and where you come from?
how much of an introduction?
Well, just,
I'm retired attorney. I practiced law in New York and then in Boston for about 20 years, moved to Westport in 2002. And was appointed by Governor Patrick to be the Civil Service Commissioner in the state. I've had that job, full-time job since 2006. Excuse me, 2008. And I'm married, no children. My wife is an alum of the New Britain, Connecticut Public Housing. And we are living now at the condos at Oak Ridge, which probably may never even know it exists. It's an over 55 community, 43 units that moved from Southwestport to there in 2011. And I have a strong interest in making hopefully my state job and hopefully in this job of being fair and impartial, but ensuring that just being sure that everyone gets due process in anything that happens is my mantra.
well, welcome aboard, congratulations.
Okay, any other comments?
Sure. I would like to provide a service as far as David for the business. I watch him day after day, year after year, and I gotta say, that guy does a quality business. Well, he does a long, I would just like to say.
What I find amazing is that he's on time every single day at 8 o'clock. I mean, I never seen anything like that in my life. You pick it up as employees, they'll be on the clock. This man is on time.
I looked at the work order when I looked at the work order. I mean, it's amazing how fast.
There's everything done.
And I've had, if we have housing issue cases come up in our commission, and I've seen other housing authorities with backlog responses to energy questions. Ridiculous as well. And this is just remarkable how fast.
And he does the work orders and at the same time turns the apartments, mows the grass, all that stuff.
We have a confidence there.
I think, we have a
Yeah, I agree with you.
One more question I have is, did you ever,
Yeah.
did you ever get a date on when the project's gonna start, the painting? Did you get a date?
Well, we have to sign the contract, and then we have to have a kickoff meeting. We'll communicate that to everybody.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Hearing that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Some rules.
So moved. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any discussion? All right, thank you, everybody.